It's glad to see a group of people gathered and very enthusiastic. I hope you had time to look through the exhibition, which is currently ongoing, Menggodam at level 3. So it would be helpful, I believe, if you have seen the work. Nevertheless, the artists today will also speak briefly in regards to their work, and we'll have an image at the back of the work that the artist is referring to as we speak. Let me start by welcoming everyone and introducing myself. My name is Roopesh. I am the co-curator for the Menggodam. Together with me, I have Guna just next to me on my left, who is the co-curator for the Menggodam show that's currently running on the 3rd floor. So the order of today is I will speak briefly in terms of our early initiation, in terms of how we conceptualize the ideas, and Guna will speak on the idea itself very briefly, and then we take turns in terms of allowing artists to speak very briefly on their respective works in regards to how they conceptualize their work, how they think about their work, and also in terms of the presentation itself, where you will see the images projected later. What would follow thereafter is hopefully we'll open up the floor for any forms of Q&A, question and answer session. And we are really hoping that we'll have some very vibrant questions, interaction, discussion that goes on. So please keep in mind as we are presenting, as well as the artists are presenting, if you have any questions or any thoughts, any comments, we welcome those for us to share in this session for discussion. So we really want to open up the discourse and the discussion today, not only confined to the work itself, but other related issues that really think about our relationships to technology in a very broad sense. Accordingly, also, I take this opportunity to also pre-inform all of you in terms of some of the programs that will be coming that really tries to tackle and address some of the ideas and concerns that we have in thinking about technology to various forms. We have performance, workshops, talks, and panel discussions that we have planned for the coming months. So without wasting any time, we have a quite limited time, up to 4 plus. I would just start by saying this is a sort of a discussion that started on about 2.5 years ago between Guna and myself. I've known Guna for quite some time, and about 2.5 years ago, 3 years now, we started talking about in terms of the sort of exhibitions that we commonly see, especially in Malaysia. I was speaking about that in terms of lack of sort of critical discourse and really rethinking about our relationship to technology, because there's a particular way in which how technology per se, and usually this is associated with computer-related sort of technology specifically, and the sort of narratives that we hear in terms of what it means in relation to nation building, in relation to education, especially with the coming of AI and automation and so forth. So we have this sort of a lot of talking and discussion and narrative and rhetoric going around. But what we were concerned really is, first and foremost, is to really broaden up, to expand the very notion of technology. It's not only confined to computation models. There are other forms of technological means in which exist out there. So the way in which we conceptualize and think about technology needs to be expanded and need to be broadened. That was some of a major concern that we had. How can we make attempts to curate a show that would allow for this sort of much more expanded thinking and discussion about technology? That's one. And then the second thing we were also thinking is what that means when we talk about technology in that manner. How do we think about that in relation to artistic practice? And that's where we slowly came to derive to this idea of Menggodam. And of course, that led for us to think about it in a culture-specific manner, which I'm sure Guna will expand on this discussion further on when I pass the mic to him. So that led to the sort of the show that you see today. It will be traveling later on, and there's a reason for it to travel. A few other places, to Singapore, to Penang, to Bandung in Indonesia, and we are also currently in discussion, hopefully to Thailand as well, I hope. So having said that, very briefly, I'll pass the mic to Guna. And then after that, for the artists sitting together with us, thank you again for working with us. Just that, I think the slides are arranged in alphabetical order. So feel free to, when your work emerges, please just take the mic and start talking about your work. All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Roopesh, and thanks again to the artists for participating in this show, and thank you all for making time on a Sunday afternoon. So Menggodam, basically the premise of Menggodam is there are some ways of thinking about technology that remain unexplored because we are not thinking about the role of culture in how we adapt, adopt, and creatively remake technologies. Very often, the technological discourse seems to be one-sided, where you get a technology and then you are supposed to just use the technology as is presented to you, as it defines the particular parameters of how you interact with it. A lot of what we are trying to do in this show is really to create different and alternative ways in which we could deal with, think about technology, specifically as as it emerges in particular cultures and cultural conditions. Which is why traveling the show is important for us, because we are trying to map the ways in which different parts of, especially Southeast Asia, are thinking about technology differently through the arts. So Menggodam essentially means hacking, both the physical act of beating something down and breaking into something, as well as computer hacking. But the word has many other meanings, including piracy, creative retooling, changing to fit your needs. So there are many meanings around it. And as I've been talking about, as we were thinking about this, we realized that there are many other similar cultural notions in other parts of Southeast Asia. In Philippines, they call it descarte. In Indonesia, they call it akal-akalan. And outside of the region, Southeast Asian region, in Brazil, they call it gambiara. In Mexico, they call it rascochismo. And for a while during the Cuban embargo, during the trade embargo on Cuba, they developed a whole series of new devices and things, responses to the embargo, because they could not access the rest of the world. So they developed a whole series of things called rikimbili. So it's found everywhere. The idea that people find their own strategies to deal with technology, develop technologies that are grounded in their own material cultural conditions. So we feel like bringing together artists like this who are dealing in innovative and different ways with technology in a culturally grounded way would be helpful. How they are hacking and reprogramming existing technologies or developing new technologies that would help us to expand our ideas about what is technology, as well as how we can deal with it. So that's where the premise is, and we selected these artists over a period of 2.5 years. We traveled, we met with a lot of artists, we identified a larger list of artists, and then we honed it down to the 9 artists in accordance with the space constraints that we had. We identified 9 artists, and we also were trying to get some interesting dialogues between the artists' individual works and the rest of the show. So that's it. So we will have individual artists talk now. This is really for you to interact with the artists. We will recede into the background, hopefully, very quickly. As soon as the last artist has finished, perhaps we can open it up. And if people are still shy and not asking questions, then we might prompt the artists with some questions. All right. So, Corinne, you want to start? You go first.
Hello. Hi, I'm Corinne de San Jose. I'm from the Philippines. So this is my work. It's called 5959. So it consists of 118 radios playing 2 different audio sounds. So half of audio files. So half of the radios are playing crickets that I recorded from a mountain, which was close to where I grew up, and half are crickets from a cricket farm. So the cricket farm produces crickets for food. Um, but I think, okay, I'll get to that part later on. For me, the work, really, the beginning of the work is exploring narratives around silence. So, because I wanted to talk about how silence doesn't really exist, and we need to kind of orchestrate silence in quotes, I guess. Um, I'm also a film sound designer, so with my work, I use a lot of ambient sounds to depict silence and the cliches surrounding that idea. For instance, what is a calm and peaceful night? Or daytime ambience is like bird song. So, but at night, a calm, peaceful, quiet night is usually like crickets. And then, I went into a rabbit hole already and eventually got to like different expressions. Let's say if you tell a joke and it's not funny and people say, oh, crickets, right? Um, it's, it has to do also with conversation. So when you're talking to someone, this is what we say when they're not answering crickets. And that's why also that there are two kinds of um, sound, different sounds. Even if like within the space, they've already combined into the same thing. And also, an important part of the work is the radios because I was also thinking of radio silence, which is what we say. Now we use it for like disappearing or ghosting someone or not wanting to be in contact with another. But of course, there's also historical background to that, and that's how during wars, if you want to disappear from communication, that's what they call what the radio silence is. Yeah, I think that's it for now.
Hi, my name is Fendi Mazalan. I'm an experimental composer and musician from Teluk Intan, Perak, Malaysia. And this is my installation. I'm using installation names Negaraku because I'm hacking the 3D printer to play our national song Negaraku using only the motors from the 3D printer. So actually, the idea I just want to play doing a Negaraku song using a music box, but I think it's too plain. So I decided to try to hack the 3D printer's motors to play our national song, and this is the result. Okay. Okay.
Xin chào. Hello, everyone. My name is Giang. I come from Hanoi, Vietnam. And my work is human learning. So the work is basically an observation from the history of artificial intelligence. There's always this desire of creating machines that resemble humans, and it's called machine learning, right? And human learning is an inversion of this desire. So it's a speculative scenario where in the future, imagine your child, your new generations of young people is being trained by AI and virtual agent. What will be the future? So this is some kind of speculative exercise that I gave the performers. Now you perform like AI simulations and perform like very simple tasks such as standing up, walking, playing football. Because in artificial intelligence nowadays, I think the only task that artificial intelligence is trying to cope with us is basically the mobility skill. And there are many simulations that AI company is doing to achieve some kind of movement for the robot as well as artificial intelligence. And the result, because AI will always try to be efficient, and they try to be, for example, if they try to stand up, they try to calculate the most efficient way with the joints so that they can stand up, but sometimes it doesn't follow the mobilities or the way that a real human move. So hence the weird movement that you see in our standards that you see on the screen. Yeah. So I gave the performer this prompt, if you will, and they perform this kind of robot dance or artificial intelligent dance choreography. Yeah. So that's basically my work. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay, Assalamualaikum and good evening. Morning, evening. I'll talk about the work straight away. So it is kind of like an IKEA hack made using the products of IKEA, resembling an iconic symbol taken from the Kelantan shadow puppet. Is the east coast of Malaysia. We call it pohon beringin. So pohon beringin. So this one, I think it's very symbolic in nature. The idea of the work, but it's made a few years back. It's made actually for an edition concept exhibition, rethinking edition, the name of the show. So the initial idea is about the idea of sharing things, like people can make their own edition of artworks. So IKEA is the best, I think, accessible to everyone. They can make their own products. It's very similar to open source ideas from the internet, where we share things and it's downloadable for makerspace things, So the title of the work is open source, plant your own tree. So it resembles that idea of a tree, a symbolic tree, the pohon beringin, that actually represent the universe or the life. So it's a way of living. So that's how it relates to IKEA, as how you actually construct your living area with modern products, modern ideas of living actually. So the tree of life is used. Pohon beringin is, some call it a tree of life. So what I did is try to look some products from IKEA that might work to represent the structure of the pohon beringin itself, such as I use everything from hangers to lights and the puppets, because we have usually the pohon beringin is depicted with mythological animals. So you can see some puppets and squirrels and flowers, traditional motifs. So it is made to based on the structure of the traditional pohon beringin. It's bilateral symmetry and everything. So, and then I provide an instruction manual as giveaways to anyone who wanted to construct this artwork themselves. And so the idea is you can own the edition of the artwork if you wanted to. Basically that's the idea. And when Guna and Roopesh reframe it in this idea of menggodam, I think is more interesting. And because I didn't even thought about hacking IKEA at the first place. So it first comes with the idea of an addition, a free addition to everyone. So now it's a frame in the perspective of hacking, and I think it's an interesting viewpoints, and that's it. I wish everyone can enjoy that work. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so Fan Chon is another artist that we have together with us. Unfortunately, he couldn't be with us today. So for Fan Chon, maybe I'll just speak briefly on his work. This is actually a 15 minutes short video. You can view it in the gallery. So pretty much what it does is it's actually a mockumentary format. So it is actually an instruction for you to turn a siakap into a salmon. Pretty much an instruction of how you can actually use certain techniques of coloring, taking a siakap fish and to turn it in order that it is red enough, similar to the appearance of a salmon fish. So there are many things in which, if you look at the documentary itself, it follows through these procedures of how to do that, how you can achieve it, and the sort of materials that you can use in order to add the coloring to the fish, to the siakap, so that it would look like a salmon fish. I think Fan Chon talks about many levels in terms of the sort of the status that the salmon fish speaks about. If you think about it in terms of how salmon is valued in Malaysia, it's imported, it's expensive, and it also speaks about affordability, who can afford to buy such expensive food, who consumes which group of people, versus siakap, a much more accessible local type of fish. So he speaks about that in terms of the sort of class system that exists and calls upon like the eating habits and how that reflects certain sort of class habits. Another thing I want to add on Fan Chon is Fan Chon originates from Pulau Ketam, which is in Klang, very close by here. So he grew up in a fishing village. His father was a fisherman, and this has been part of his work, exploring this sort of the economics and the sort of social politics around fishery and fishing and all that. There's a series of work that he have created. So particular for us, we are also thinking about it as another form of menggodam, really like using this sort of artificial coloring materials and also some organic ones to really hack the sort of the appearance of the fish, a sort of another forms of technology that one applies in order to emulate, to create sort of other forms of appearances, in this case fish, so that it would reflect a much more higher quality, much more sort of class that you aspire to, like, I also get to eat the sort of a salmon fish, at least in the appearance, if not the real thing. And also you can think about it in the context of how we create this sort of artificial products. You can think about stuffs like, vegetarian fish, vegetarian meat. So this idea of aesthetic, the sort of technology comes to feed into our food habits, and also in terms of the aesthetics of it, even the appearance of this sort of artificial food, in terms of how it looks like a fish, how it looks like a meat, this sort of thing. And there's a whole lot of discussion in terms of replacing meat with other substances, right? In terms of talking about sustainability, how do we approach this with the sort of problems that we have when it talks about environmental and sustainability and such. So I'll leave it there. I think we can open that up later on as we move on for further discussion in the Q&A session later. Okay, Mira, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Selamat siang, good afternoon or evening. Sorry, I'm a bit nervous. My name is Mira Rizki Kurnia from Bandung, Indonesia. In this exhibition, I present a work named Main, or Main in English as well. Actually, this work consists of 36 of can. As you can see, if you have already visited my work, basically the form looks like a telephone toy can that maybe some of you have already experienced it in our childhood. like with the paper, glass, and wire. But in this version, I try to expand it. Like I use different materials like stainless steel can, and then with the uh, stainless bracket as well. And those can is attached very strong into the wall. And then I try to expand the line of the wire to spread the communication line into all over the space. So actually, this shape is very specific for Ilham Gallery. It's very special. And then actually, I have like intention that this work is actually want to show in the different perspective, like how we communicate to each other mechanically, because I try to show it through this line and this configuration of cans. So it's somehow this line is connecting to each other, but actually in the other side, they're going to like separate direction. And then if you try to communicate through that lines, it could produce like a distortion, like echo at the space. So I expected the unexpected distortion of the sound, and then this our voice through this can, it's vibrate through the membrane of each cans. And then this membrane is vibrating the line. And this line, I try to catch the vibration and amplify it through some speakers. Actually, there is 3 speakers in there. And this speakers is vibrating the plate, which is, there is some sense over there. And this sense is try to visualize like how strong and what kind of frequency that this microphone catch from the line when we try to play around with that. So why it's mine or main itself is I try to play around with this. Maybe simple technology, yeah? Not too complicated, it's very simple. I mean, like, we can see that obviously how this voice propagate through the lines. And then beside the configuration itself, I try to visual it through the, what is that, the sand. So, or maybe there is a, not a fun fact, but just a fact. the, the can itself is different than the can that I use for this installation in Indonesia, because for the production issue, it's a challenge to find the same can. So the can, the brackets is locally, yeah, sourced from here. Even with the sand itself, I took it from the construction of MRT in front of there. So I would like to make this work is very specific for here, yeah, this area. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Tish. I'm an artist from Singapore. So for my work, a lot of the process behind my work is actually kind of like abusing or like torturing devices that we have in our everyday lives, and then like turning them against themselves. Yeah, so a lot of my process is about understanding like how these objects actually work, and then not making them work the way that they were supposed to. Yeah. So this work is called Do Wow. So you have a very familiar like robot vacuum, right? Which like, I think most of us have at home, I guess. And the whole purpose of this thing is supposed to help you clean your home effectively. But what I've done is just a very small intervention, and then suddenly becomes an artist. Actually, you know, he should be here giving the talk and not me. Like I'm just the artist manager, right? Yeah. So like he has his like vacuum function kind of disabled because of the intervention, and then as he goes around his usual patterns of cleaning, you just notice like how he keeps rewriting and redrawing on the charcoal on the ground. Yeah, like and I have no control over like how much time he wants to take for his performance. Sometimes it's 2 minutes, sometimes it's 10 minutes. It's up to him. You know, artist being artist, he's just like that, right? So it's just the way that it is. Yeah. So something that's very interesting through this entire process is how we like. I think for me, what I've observed is that we humans, we are becoming a bit more like robotic in a sense. We run on like autopilot. We go through the same cycles all the time. Whereas like we are designing devices and robots that are like more human. They move, they can speak to us, right? So, and through this exhibition, we've given him a name. I call him Willy because in our initial experimentations, he was a bit like wonky, so I call him really wonky. But Giang calls him like Pollock because of the patterns he's making. So give him whatever name you want. Like he's an artist. Yeah. So yeah, I thought this relationship that we have with our devices is very interesting because they become like a pet to us, right? Yeah. And also in this process of actually exhibiting this work, I think like I admittedly also place a lot of very human expectations on him, even though he's a device. Like I expect him to be performing constantly, you know, like why you not like moving, and people are just standing there watching him and he's just like sitting and staring back at you. So yeah, there's a lot of this like this I don't really know how to describe it, but just this relationship that we have to the objects that we have around us. Yeah, essentially. If you have time, like just be patient with him and watch him, yeah, do his thing and appreciate the artwork that he's done. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Witaya. I come from Thailand, and my background is I graduated in fine art painting, but I always love science and electronic as well. Um, I created textile story because I'm fascinated by the way traditional Thai fabric carry story in their patterns. Every thread and design reflects our culture, belief, and memory in the past. I wanted this hidden story is to come alive, not just for people look at, um, uh, but to reveal. I combine light, movement, and sensor to transform the weaving patterns into movie images. When to walk closer, the wake up, lights turn on, and pattern be, being to move. In, it feels like the fabric is speaking to you. For me, textile story is a bridge between tradition and technology, a way to show our story to stay alive, able to move, change, and connect with people today. Thank you.
Hi everyone. My name is Yang Jie. I'm an artist from Singapore, and my background is in. I used to study electronics before coming to the arts, and then I am also a sculptor, trained traditionally at the Nanyang Academy of Fine Arts. So my whole practice in this series is called Second Lives. It came from this whole interest of mine during COVID to pick up kintsugi, the art of preparing ceramics. So over the course of learning kintsugi, when my friends know about the fact that I'm trying to learn kintsugi, they'll start telling me about how, hey, I have broken this cup at home. Do you want something to practice with? Then you just give me all these cups. And very often when I receive cups like this, right, they will lose a spare part or lose a chip, or maybe have some parts that are broken beyond repair. And I have noticed many of these. I've kind of liked the fact that when I jigsaw puzzle them back together, I realized there are parts that are missing, and then I start to imagine what would come up from those parts. Yeah. So the first in the series was the walking cup. If you have been in the exhibition, it's the walking cups. So it was from during COVID, many places shut down, right? Places were giving away all their, like there was this Japanese restaurant in Singapore. They was giving away all their cups and wares. And then they were going to throw it out, and then one of the cleaners they were friends with, that start to let me know that, oh no, there's this shop that's going to give away all their cups. Do you want to take them? Then he carried all these, like, I think 2 trays of cups, of sake cups to me. Then I started to imagine how, they used to hold hot tea, and then people would start to, when hot tea is poured in them, they will be hot. So the people who use them will start to blow at them. And then since these cups are broken, then they are living their second lives now. Now, what kind of function can I give? Or what kind of lives would they live? And would they remember their old function? So that was the whole premise and whole starting point of the whole project, Second Lives. Yeah. It is the fact that we live in this very consumerist society, right? That we have all these, we buy all these things, and then Taobao is cheaper, so we just get to let go of stuff. And then you see, when you go to the rubbish dump, every day I go to the refuse place below my house, and I'll see, oh, someone's thrown away something very nice. And I'll just take it home or take it in my studio and then leave it there for a few months and think about, oh, what can I do with these things? Yeah. And this whole project also came about from my whole interest to combine my 2 practices, my interest in engineering and building robots, and combine this craft, this very traditional craft, kintsugi. Yeah. So if you look, I try to identify where and cracks and places that have been damaged, and think about what could have caused that, and at the same time think about what I can do to it to make it move. Yeah. So in a way, they are performative objects. I'm a sculptor. My lecturer used to be a performance artist, and he kept pushing me to perform, and I refused to perform. So in a way, I am the person. I just make my robots perform. Yeah, that's how I think about my works. Yeah. So I think that's about it. Let's move on. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we've covered everyone. Yeah, we have covered everyone. So yeah, first and foremost, thank you so much. I think that was very helpful. I think brief and straight to the point in terms of like the thinking that went behind the creation of the work. Thank you so much for all the artists. I think maybe I'll just open up first. If there's any questions or comment from the people, from the audience, we would welcome any of those to start with any sort of discussions or questions that you might have. Oh yeah, there we have, yes.
Thank you so much. Regarding the artwork by, sorry, hold on. The one with the dance, the recorded dance. Yeah, I was wondering, I actually brought this question up during the tour, but I thought I'd ask again. I noticed that it took place in the badminton court, and it actually reminded me of like a robotics competition where you have a drawn line and then you're meant to like follow the line. And I was wondering if maybe that was something you had referred to as well.
Thank you for your question. It's a vague reference to robotic trainings as well as artificial intelligence training or simulation, because in simulations they have like this kind of gridded 3D space where the AI 3D figures will try to stand up and try to walk, and on the other hand you have places like more or less like the badminton place where they go into intentionally draw the line so that the robot stay inside that box. Yeah, and they test if the robot can follow a line, cannot cut the lines, or like something like that. Yeah, so it's a vague reference to that. But also because of the badminton play is a place where people actually it's a human activity to play, and in artificial intelligence research there's a lot of thinking or research around game mechanism, because game mechanism is actually to play a game is actually a function that they try to make artificial intelligence to do, like to enjoy themselves and to play as well. So that's a vague refer to that as well. Yeah.
Hi, I want to ask Corinne. I don't know if I missed it just now during the tour, but maybe you can explain it again. Why are there the two groups, and what happened with the what would expect us to experience as audience about the two groups?
If you listen to it, it's not obvious. I think, but to me, conceptually, it's the idea of a useless conversation. You know, radios receive, someone's broadcasting something. Like, I mean, in fact, if you look at the work, they're facing against each other. So I have a narrative against each other, away from each other. So I have a narrative in my head of these two groups constantly saying something, no one listening. So it's like a useless conversation. And that's why I had to split it into two groups. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
But do you notice any difference between the two?
Yes, there is. Because, so the farmed crickets, it's very isolated. It's like a pen full of crickets. So you don't hear so much the other insects. So, but if you go to the other side, you'll hear cicadas, you're gonna hear birds, like faint, yeah. But essentially, I mean, I guess I'm also alluding to this idea that if everyone's just talking their own words, it all becomes one muddled thing. You know, you can't distinguish what a person is saying if everyone's just talking over each other. And that's why I'm also like, because I have been interested in silence as a reaction to current events. And so my research has been moving towards that and really revolving around silence, narratives of silence and noise, how we deal with the sound of our everyday lives, or how we communicate also with each other. Yeah, so it's really communication, I think.
Yeah, further on that one, why cricket? Thank you.
Because I liked all the, as I said earlier, I'm a film sound designer also. And so the cliche for film sound design of a quiet night is like crickets, you know, because if there's a storm coming, if there's danger coming, crickets won't do that sound because it's also a mating call, right? So conditions have to be right for crickets to make that sound. And so it's also this story of a peaceful evening in cinema, at least.
Would you consider frogs and toads?
I just find it less calming. I'm scared of frogs because they're scarier looking creatures, or they're less neutral. You know, you see them, you know, they have a visual presence, but crickets kind of hide, you know. You just hear them. They appear at specific times of the day, and yeah, it's more hidden. Yeah.
Thank you. One question for the AI. We do imitate robotic dance. What do you think about that one? Thank you.
Can you, sorry,
Okay,
I don't
so
really
that
understand.
one is like AI training us. So we are also imitating how robot dance, right? So we have competition about that one and how we move to imitate machine movement. So what do you think about that one? Thank you.
So very interesting. Thank you for the question. Actually, when I did the performance, I worked with some dancer who is trained in previously trained in robot dance themselves, and it's a style of very popular dance. But this time I told them this is actually the way that artificial intelligence and robot move and dance. So can you learn this new kind of movement? And for me, it's like a it's actually like more real than the robotic dance that they've been trained before, the performer that they've been trained before. Yeah. So yeah.
Hi, I have a question to Haris. Since his work is like more on IKEA diagrams and so on, do you have any issue with copyrights?
Um, I think I think if everybody actually manage to create their own edition of the work, then IKEA will be richer. Yeah. I'm actually promoting their work to be constructed in other ways. So I'm doing no harm to IKEA. I have no issues with IKEA as well. I use IKEA products in my home too. So uh, until now, I have no legal. Haven't got any letters from IKEA or not. But yeah, then somebody told me for that you should get sponsored from IKEA. But I think that yeah, but I think that defeated the purpose of hacking. And I think it needs to be in that radical way of seeing it. Did I answer that? Yeah, I say your question, Niza? Thank you.
I just wanted to say that what he's doing is going back to remember one of the meanings of menggodam is piracy. You take something that is not yours and claim it as yours. And but what he's also doing is parody. You take an object that is meant to be assembled for a particular purpose and then take it over and repurpose it, right? And in a parodic way. So under copyright law, there is protections for fair use under parody. If you are making fun of something and then using some images from that, you are protected by what they call fair use. One of the four cases of fair use, you are protected. Whether it's here in Malaysia or anywhere else. So next time the lawyers come knocking, just tell them I'm parodic.
But maybe I add some. We don't have IKEA store in Kelantan. We don't have IKEA store in Kelantan. So my mom and my aunties, when they see IKEA products, oh, barang IKEA. So it's quite popular and I think desirable, yeah. So it makes IKEA like something you should have in your house. So in a way, it's a critic in a way on how you are building up your life with IKEA products and being proud of it. So it's a parody. It's protected, right? Protected, right? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you, everyone. And by the way, lovely talk. It was really fun to hear everyone's work, and I really enjoyed the exhibition, by the way. I have a question for Tisya. I find your artwork actually very intriguing because of the use and the ethical use of technology. And I was just wondering about your thoughts of ethical wise, because I think in the art scene is also whenever you use animals or materials, there's always a question about ethical use. And I find it very, I just want to know what your thoughts of the ethical use of technology, which is kind of in a way, because you're also personifying the objects, right? So what are your thoughts on that ethical use?
I think even though, is it working? Okay, yeah, sorry. Technology, yeah. I think even though it's a moving device, you don't see it as alive in the sense that if I were to just kill it off and dump it away, I don't feel that sense of I need to go and have a whole ceremony to cremate it and everything like that, It's just I or like we will personally like attribute some kind of like feelings or emotions to that object. So I think in terms of like, I think animals is like a whole other like ball game because it's literally like life. Yeah, this one is like mechanical life, and you can just like buy a new robot and just replace him the next day, and he's like, oh, I just call him the same name and it's the same guy, right? There's not much of that kind of difference. I mean, I feel personally for like robots, or like any of mechanical devices in general, because of like the mass production of it, you don't feel that as strongly. But that's my personal opinion. Yeah. If anyone wants to, any activists against like robot abuse, don't come at me. Thank you for the question. Yeah.
I used to pity ChatGPT when they are answering too much of my question. Can you help? I felt pity to the machine. You know, can you please help? It's like treating the machines in a very well-mannered way. So,
About the name, when I think I was thinking of the name for the robot vacuum was Sisyphus. So because he was doomed to do that, being that artist, forced to be an artist. So so to quote Camus, you must imagine he's happy doing it.
He hasn't complained to me yet, so I think he's fine. He's okay. Yeah. His name just keeps getting longer. I call him Willy, now he's Pollock, now he's Sisyphus. I think, yeah, I will register his name with an ID or something. Thank you for the suggestion. Yeah, I just wanted to add on to the idea of like the empathy that you feel for these objects. I actually have another work where I abuse another robot vacuum. I put him on like a lazy Susan platform, and because robot vacuums have this drop sensor where they detect a step and then they just keep going back. And because of the size of the robot vacuum and the lazy Susan, he just like is trapped in this constant like wanting to escape but not being able to escape. Yeah, and he has these little like brushes that look like arms, and he's like screaming like, "Help me, please!" Like. So when people look at that work, they're like, "Oh my God, this guy, he's just trying his best, but he just can't escape." And it's that kind of like emotional, like why do we attribute this kind of emotional like feelings towards something that's completely like he's not alive in the sense he's just animated. Yeah, and I find that psychology, I guess, like quite interesting. Yeah.
I have a question regarding the revolving textiles and the strobing lights. Could you tell us a little bit more about the process of how you selected the textiles, the pattern that you chose, and the process of making it all work together to produce that effect?
Okay. I use textile despite for that northern Thailand because the pattern is different of the scale and select form the different of color. Because this technique is like that you make animation for the film. The textile light film because it's space of pattern is simply, And traditional textile is same the film format. In our culture, I'm not sure the textile is not same pattern, I'm not sure is it good answer. So it's more of a technical reason that you use that textile? So because of the spacing, that you can Yes. animate it, is it?
Yes, I can animate it.
You cannot see the animation, not move and put stop light. Stop light is to make illusion for your eye. Thank you for catching.
I have a question for Mira. So, like the work mine, you said that it's actually a site-specific work, so it actually changes depending on space. So I was just wondering about how would you decide the location and like where would you place the tins? Because I mean, downstairs, what I've noticed was that like one wall was like literally just the whole thing there, but then another part was like really high up. Like, how would you like? Is there like a rule in terms of your practice in composing this artwork?
Okay, thank you for the question. Actually, I decide the configuration is based on how I can explore the spaces, I mean the walls, because I need to know the arrangement of the exhibition, and then I try to decide like which area could be the, like the center of the artworks, and then which area could be like a transition zone, like when we can see like the line, like how this sound could transfer to another side of the world. So I found it interesting when I see the aisle, like the hall. It's quite challenging, and there's 3 doors down there. So it's like I think I want to challenge people like they can go through the artworks itself, like there's a crossing line in there, so they can see like, whoa, like that, like into the jungle of the line, and then actually it goes up and down like that. So I would like to make it more how the audience seeing is like going dynamic. So the artwork's not like horizontally. So I just realized that I have an intention. I would like to make the audience to be there and like present to see these artworks. So like I want them to see these small things going to any other direction and how it ends. Yeah, and of course, I'm thinking a lot of like how it could be like conveniently accessed by the audience as well. Yeah, I think that is it enough?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
So the design is, you decide only when you reach the lamp, or do you have something already in mind? You had a start, you said you had a start at the end point, right? But the design, is it something that you already pre-planned, or you did it on the site?
Actually, I have pre-planned it before when Guna give me the map. It's so challenging. So I try to make a sketch with SketchUp, like 3D sketching. But then when I came here, it's totally different. So it's like, okay, let's do it. Yeah, yeah. But then to be in space is really helping me a lot. I can consider the acoustic of the spaces and how I can make the interaction with the audience through the works. But there's kind of, maybe I call it a trick, maybe, yeah, to configure these scans. For example, like if I want to make the line is turning like this, like bending the line, I put maybe if you see if you visit my work, you can see that there's some cans like hanging close to each. Oh, sorry. Okay, I'm like a vocalist of a band, yeah. So, for example, like this can, like for this corner, so it bends the line without too bending it, because I need to keep the propagation vibrating the membrane of each can. So thank you. It's switching. Okay. So it has a lot of prediction. Like I need to count like how much angle, yeah, the good angle to make this vibration is still effective to propagate to another point. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Mira, for that. Just to add on a bit on our side when we were working with your work, one of the thing is when Mira sent us through email the actual layout and the way she planned, and then immediately I responded saying, just be aware that there's a door. Initially, that was not, I think it was not informed. So then I told her there's a door and it's the restroom. So you have to anticipate people will be walking through that corridor, people will be using that. You need to think about access. So that's something we spoke about. And then I followed through by giving you the height of the door, the height of the ceiling, and the planning in which, to get a better picture to Mira in terms of her planning in actually doing the installation. And then later on, as you said, right, when you came and when you saw, it was a totally different experience. And I think we've decided another sort of iteration of the installation itself. And again, we had some sort of a discussion in terms of thinking about some of the placement. So in principle, I felt like it was a very exciting idea to see it coming through fruitfully. And it was also interesting to think about it as this sort of a process that requires this sort of negotiation and discussion among the people who own the space, we as curators, and especially as the artist. Once it's conceived, then we are reconsidering the other sorts of limitations and consideration. And it was exciting for me to actually see, because there's something else I'm thinking about in terms of site-specific work that came together, and looking at your work and thinking about the process of how these things come together.
Thank you very much. I want to pick on Corinne. You mentioned usefulness and uselessness.
Yeah.
Something like that. But this question is not for you. I think I want to expand and find out how the rest of the panel actually think about the notion of usefulness and uselessness in your practice. I noticed that Yang Jie, it was very funny. At the end, you said, "Oh, these are my robots," and then whereas Tisya turned it the other way around, my robots, so-called an artist. Okay, so I wonder, like, as artists, how do you transform something useful into something uselessness but very playful, if you see that, or if you don't see that, okay? And perhaps I noticed that there's this kind of, playfulness in how artists are doing that. Do you agree with, actually the answer, question I want to ask, do you agree with how the curator are playing with your work?
I think it's interesting to see how because as artists we grow affinity and we grow attached to our works, or somehow in some way or in some sense, right? And it's always interesting to see how other people approach our practices and how they conceive of these things, these different practices as a movement that's happening within Asia, within the greater world in general, right? So to regards with function and non-function, I think that is the very capitalist way of and very productive. We have to be producing productive members of society. We have to have a function to live. And in a way, when I'm approaching found objects, is to find that I just love the way they exist, and I celebrate the fact that they have their flaws, and because it's something that I used to own or someone used to own, there's this attachment, sentimental value to it. Maybe it's that sentimental value that adds to that thing. I'm not very sure. Anyone has anything to add? Yeah.
I think for me, when I mentioned that, I was thinking of, because the work was done a long time, in 2019 was the first time I showed this work. And always, I think a common thread with the way I work is, it's really narrative based. And so when I talk about useful and useless, I like to play with the idea of our, my own relationship with objects also, and material. And so, and the other thing you asked is, do we agree with how the curators placed our work? No, I think that it's an interesting perspective, because it's just one factor of the work. In other words, it's one way we approach, or at least when I speak for myself, it's one way I approach my work, because I always say I'm not art schooled. So it's very, and so I like that idea that there's that part that's being noticed by someone. that I am making do with the knowledge that I have amassed in practical life, you know, and things that I've just learned by myself. Because I feel like my whole art practice is hacking. I'm just making the most of the resources that I have. Yeah. Okay, anyone else?
I just wanted to add about the whole uselessness, form and function, a different way of thinking about this. Form and function, that tension between form and function. What kind of form that should art take? And what kind of functions should it serve? And so if you think about form-function relationships, very often they say, well, somewhat naively and probably simplistically, they say in design, form follows function, right? You need a chair that you can sit on. So the form of the chair must follow the function that you hope it will serve. And in the arts, again, simplistically, they think form must not follow function, form must disrupt function. Form necessarily needs to play with that tension with function. And I think that there is a way of, the way we thought about a lot, and we discussed this a lot when we started selecting the works, was, the notion of menggodam itself is fundamentally, because all hacking, all manners of disrupting, disturbing, replacing, substituting an existing program with something that you write over it, that you write in order to disrupt it, the program that you receive, it's itself, in fact, trying to disrupt function, disrupt normal use, right? And so in many ways, if you look at every one of these works, they are fundamentally, what's common to all of them is that they are disrupting the normal ways in which we will encounter these objects, whether it's a vacuum board or a textile that you would normally spread out, look at it differently, and it's either spread on a surface or it's hanging from a wall. So these functions are being disrupted in some ways. The transistor radio suddenly becoming a receiver of just one particular frequency that you cannot tune out of, right? So each of these are actually attempts to play on that, exactly this notion of menggodam, which is how do you think about ways of experiencing those very things that we are used to, that we have received, but in ways that are different, fundamentally different. So the artist's works point in that direction. Again, not being prescriptive, right? So I know Tisya enough not to think that she's prescribing robotic abuse, right? Where you take next time you go back home, you take your vacuum board and you start playing with it so that it'll do all kinds of crazy things that it is not meant to do. This is not a formula for how to act, right? In some cases it is, right, with Harris. But in each case, it is about saying, hey, the things that we have received, we do not need to think about it in the form we receive it. We can reshape it differently. So, I talked about it earlier yesterday at the opening. This meaning is use. When you say meaning is use, it means that meaning is not inherent in the thing itself. Nothing comes to us with the meaning inherent in it, because very often and almost always you are in a relationship with that thing that you feel or comes to it with a meaning that we think is attached to it. How we use it changes fundamentally what it means to us and how it means afterwards. So that's fundamental to the way we thought about menggodam and the selection of the artists.
I think it feels good to make to make a very functional product to be useless. I think that what Guna and Rupesh had been seeing from our works is that the meaningless of the work. I mean, I transform a very functional product, furnitures, products, utilitarian products into something useless. If art is useless. If art is useless. I mean, a painting can be useless to someone. A painting can be useless. But that's how I see it. The uselessness of the work is part of that satisfying, I don't know, something like that. Yeah, it's satisfying in a way. It's satisfying in a way.
Just to just to add a bit on the idea of menggodam, I also think, I mean, personally, I always feel it's not helpful for me to think about things in binaries: usefulness, uselessness, insider, outsider, black and white. It's not helpful for me to think about it in this binary, because it always puts you in a position of, in an oppositional, as if you're resisting, attacking, fighting against this kind of a position. You end up with this kind of position. And one of the during our process of working together, one of the early works, like pretty much like I was gravitating to, is Hari's work. Like Hari's work was immediately, of course, also the reason being because I've used your work in my own thinking as well about these concepts. And the reason why I think Hari's work was useful for me in actually selecting other works and thinking about menggodam itself, because you can think about it exactly like Haris put it, right? You can also think about it as him promoting IKEA, right? It is also promoting, right? If really somebody would take and you do this, they are actually working for IKEA, right? Finding new ways of reappropriating IKEA, increasing the sales and all that. So there is a sense of ambiguity, what menggodam actually is, like to call for rethinking of this menggodam. And I think that's an interesting sort of a place to be, a very important place to be, precisely because the way in which, how we understand this notion in these different countries. So for example, when we go to Korea, it's pali-pali, right? Pali-pali means faster, faster. It doesn't carry the same sort of signification or meaning, right? So there is this sort of fuzziness to this idea of menggodam, which I think it's very productive to think about. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be in a position of antagonistic, like attacking, deconstructing, fighting, penetrating, or whatever, like all this. There's also other ways in which strategies and ways in which artists navigate and also question the way in which how things operate in the world, which does not necessarily puts a position in a very antagonistic against technology or technological means per se, but it actually questions the way we have our relationship to this material world. How do we engage, and what kind of meanings we derive? So that's one way I think about it. Like in a way, it puts a much more productive way of thinking about it, and also it raises interesting questions. That calls for us to rethink of how we engage with technology. I think there was a question, yes.
Expanding on that one, menggodam itself as form and function. What do you think of using fork to eat rice? Would that be a performance art? Thank you.
So this goes back to the core of what we are trying to get across. Technology comes to us in a way that sometimes feels like it is from the outside, and it is an imposition, it is an overwhelming presence, because it comes with its own codes of by which we need to interact with it, right? Because all other means, all other ways of interacting with particular technologies is an abuse or a misuse, right? So I gave the example of the nail and the hammer, right? So when you see a hammer, you see a nail, you say, well, yeah, the hammer is very useful. Instead of me knocking on it with on the nail with my bare hands, the hammer becomes a good tool. It's a good means to get it done, right? But no one is going to use their iPhones to beat a nail into the wall. But can we do it? It's possible, right? And the reasons why we don't do it is not because we've suddenly grown a conscience, or we've decided that Apple is a sacrosanct product and we should not be disrupting its economy that comes with it. But we don't think it is counterintuitive. And I think that this goes back to larger thinking about, so what is how does the commodity form in which things come to us, especially technologies? And don't forget, all technologies that come to us today, pretty much, and especially computational technologies, have for a long time been part of proprietary economics, right? Where someone owns it and you have use rights. You don't have ownership, right? And your use rights are limited by the protocols that technology gives you. So each time you click on the update button for your software upgrades, you are actually participating and continuing to participate in that relationship you have bought into, literally bought into. And so the ways in which we have come to experience technology, and this is why we are really, if you look at the show itself, the exhibition, it is not a high-tech show. Like most of the time when you see an art and technology show, it's like flashy, lots of really interesting kinds of things. And we've got nothing against it. We just think that, these things sometimes get in the way of looking at the actual relationship we have with the technological. Because the individual instance of the technology sometimes distorts the actual relationships we could be having with the technological. And so part of what we are trying to do is to really empower people to think differently about these things, right? And, and some of these things are, they are there ready for us to interpret them differently, use them differently, but we are not used to doing this. And what these artists do, I think, and just generally good, interesting artists do with art and technology, is to disrupt that space, that connector, art and technology. They ask fundamental questions about what that end should be. What kinds of relationships should be enacting between them? Are they even fundamentally different things? Because we have been made to think that these are fundamentally different. Because there's a particular way in which technologies are commoditized, art is a little bit more difficult to commoditize in the same manner. The markets are different, the means by which these are being sold to us is different. So I do think that, that's why we are traveling the show. We are traveling the show to different places where we can mobilize discussions, empower people to think very differently about the things that they are used to, disrupt the proprietary economics of technologies as they operate today, right? So it's interesting because Harris is working with IKEA. In 1976, Ingvar Kamprad, who was the founder of IKEA, basically he drew on a particular Scandinavian habit. It's called lista.
Lista is basically making do, exactly menggodam, right? The principle is you don't have everything around you, but you make do with what you can. So that kind of makeshift, ragtag, I will make it happen because I don't have everything I need. So it calls us to a very different kind of economy. And that's why when it came into the market, right, he was, I mean, at least the founder of IKEA was very interested in sharing, that this should be objects that we can assemble ourselves, going back to a time when we were making our own stuff. But, you know, the commoditization of convenience is exactly what we live today, right? Things have actually become conveniently available to us. We check Amazon, we check Shopee or whatever we are doing, and we walk to a shopping mall, we find these things readily available. And the ready availability of these things sometimes distorts the fact that we could potentially be building these things therefore differently. So that's at the spirit of what we are trying to do.
Just to add up, we did just comment just now. So in our studio, we have the same thing. We call it gaya. So in Malay, it says guna apa yang ada. So gaya. So you use whatever we have to achieve. Yeah, making it do is the same thing. Yeah. Another about form and function. I think we forget about to add form and intention. So rather than going for function, form for the function, I think most of the artists here is form and the intention of the artist. That's what I think.
I would like to ask a question about the moving teacups. Was it always your intention to incorporate not just movement, but the audience participation, as well as sound in your work?
Oh, okay. As a kinetic sculptor, my primary actually the thing that drives me to make things is to observance of gestures, the way people use things, right? And then the technology is to help me achieve those functions in a way. Yeah. So and then in my own interest in robotics and in how things work, right? I realized that you can sometimes subvert the use. Like for example, the walking teacup actually uses a microphone to pick up sound waves and pick up peaks in sound waves, and then that triggers the mechanism to move. Yeah. So it seems like there's a semblance of sense and reaction and some kind of autonomy to it. But it's actually a very simple, just electric currents reaching a certain threshold, and then it triggers something to happen. Yeah. I think it's more, the intention is really just to make things that move. And then the sound and the technology I use is in some kind of ways incidental. Yeah. And it's just what I like to use to make movement. Yeah.
And in the production of this work, right, how has it affected your subsequent works?
Subsequent works? I'm still exploring. Like I just now I mentioned to some other visitors in the curatorial tour, is that I try to learn something new every time I make a new object. Yeah, and then right now because I feel that my whole practice is always about revolutions and using motors to track time in certain ways and certain forms, right? And then I feel that they lack a certain kind of hesitancy that humans get. Maybe in a way I'm trying to make my robots, my objects more human. Maybe that's the kind of intention that I have. And I like to include these, try to use feedback, use the flaws of the machine itself to create organic-looking things, organic-looking mechanical things. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, I've been given signal. We're getting towards the end. And one last question, maybe, or comments, suggestion. Yeah, please, sir.
Just a comment. I mean, it's very interesting, the title of the show, together with the collection of artists that you've brought. in this part of the world, Nusantara, there is a whole lot of menggodam action going on. And I just want to say that it's been quite a pleasure. I haven't seen the show yet, but I've been listening to the artists and looking at the stuff going on there. And I think that the thing that you've done with menggodam is, to my perspective, the championing of a multicultural, cosmopolitan mindset, because it's all about taking in what you feel and see and turning it into something more beautiful and inspiring. So thank you very much for this.
Okay, excellent note to end our discussion this evening. Thank you so much, sir. So please do make a visit. I think the show opens till 5 today, if I'm not correct, and so 5, yeah. So you still have time, I believe, to catch the show at 3rd floor. And again, I just want to remind everyone of the programs that we in the forthcoming weeks in regards to the exhibition itself. Also, feel free to talk to the artists. If you want to discuss, engage with them, exchange contacts, please do. And we are also around and available. Thank you again for making time this evening. See you all at the next meeting.